All right, so welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about personal power. How to get it, how to use it, and how to understand it. And I think what better way to dive into this than with an episode from Matri Thakur's podcast, Amplify Life. You might know her. She's a coach and personal development expert. She's all about giving you those practical tools that you can use to actually transform your life.
Yeah, she's great.
And in this episode, Mathri starts off with a question that really kind of stuck with me. She asks, have you ever felt like you're this incredibly complex machine, but you're missing the instruction manual?
Hmm.
Like life is happening to you, but you're not quite sure, how to operate.
That's such a relatable analogy. I think we've all felt that way at some point, especially when things get a little bit out of control.
Right,
Eh.
exactly. And that's where I think this idea of the cause and effect equation, as Mathuri calls it, really comes in. She's like handing us that missing manual for personal growth.
It's true. It's true.
So she lays out this idea and she actually calls it an equation. She says, you've got cause on one side and effect on the other.
Mm.
And it's all about understanding that everything we do, every choice we make, every action we take has a consequence. It has an effect.
Yeah, it's simple, but when you really think about it, it's so profound. And the real challenge that she poses is like, where do we place ourselves on this equation? Like, are we on the cause side, Are we the ones taking ownership of our lives and really, you know, being responsible for what happens, or are we on the effect side? Do we feel like things are just kind of happening to us and we're just, along for the ride?
Yeah. And what really struck me is how she defines leadership. She says a leader is anyone who makes a positive difference in the lives of others.
Mm.
And that really kind of expands our understanding of what it means to be a leader.
It does. It really does. It takes like leadership out of the boardroom and brings it into everyday life.
Mhm.
And I think for Madhuri being on the cause side, that's like the essence of leadership. It's about saying, I'm responsible for my results, regardless of what's happening around me. It's about owning your power.
Okay, so that's the cause side. But then there's the flip side, right? There's the effect side. And she gives all these examples that I think we can all relate to. It's like, saying things like, they made me feel this way, or it's their fault that this happened.
Right, and it's so easy to fall into those patterns. It's almost like our brains are wired for it in some ways.
Mhm.
From a psychological perspective, our minds are constantly trying to protect us, and sometimes that means shifting blame and playing the victim. Like it feels safer in the moment, but it's definitely not empowering. It's definitely keeping us stuck.
It is. And Mathuri's point is that responsibility, isn't something to be afraid of. It's actually a source of power. And this is where she introduces this awesome mantra that I've been repeating to myself ever since I heard this episode. She says, only I have the power to create my future, and I am responsible for the results I get.
Yeah.
Like just saying those words out loud, it just like makes you feel empowered.
I love that mantra. It's so good because it really highlights that shift in mindset from, I'm a victim of circumstance to I'm the creator of my reality. And that shift is everything. It's about recognizing that you have the power to choose, to act, and to shape your own life. It's really incredible.
Like instead of being stuck in this cycle of blame and reaction, you're suddenly in the driver's seat.
Mm.
You have agency. You have the power to choose.
Exactly. And with that agency comes the ability to set goals and to actually achieve them, because you're not waiting for things to happen. You're making them happen. You're the
Right.
one in control.
Okay, but I know what some listeners might be thinking right now. They might be thinking, okay, well, what about when bad things happen? Because let's be real, life throws curveballs.
Yeah.
Life throws us things that are completely outside of our control. What about those things?
Absolutely. It's important to acknowledge that we don't have control over every single external event in our lives. But Mathuri's point isn't about denying the reality of those events. It's about choosing our response to them. And she illustrates this with a really powerful story about one of her coaching clients.
Oh yeah, I remember that. This client was feeling completely like stuck and victimized by a situation, and Mother helped her to see that even in the face of this adversity, even in the face of this really challenging situation, she still had choices. She still had a choice in how she responded.
Exactly, exactly. And to do that, she used this fascinating visualization technique that really helps you to detach from the emotion and gain some perspective.
Right. She has the client. Imagine that they're watching a movie, like, they're watching a movie of that difficult event unfolding.
Huh.
And then she asked them to consider, what different choices or responses could you have made in that situation?
It's powerful. That simple shift in perspective can be incredibly powerful because it allows you to see the situation from a more objective standpoint, to recognize the choices that were available, even if you didn't make them at the time.
It's like stepping outside of the emotion for a moment,
Yeah.
and becoming an observer, which is so valuable because when you're in it, when you're caught up in the emotion, it's so hard to see clearly.
It really is. And this visualization technique, I think it highlights the fact that we always have a choice, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment, even if, we feel completely overwhelmed, we feel like we're stuck, we always have a choice.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that. They struggle with that feeling like their emotions are controlling them rather than the other way around. That they're just reacting to their emotions. But Mother's point is, you have the power to choose your emotional state,
Hmm.
even amidst the challenges, even amidst the ups and downs of life.
Right. And that's a game changer, especially when you consider, how often we let other people's moods or their actions affect our own emotional state.
Think about it. How many times have you let someone else's bad mood completely ruin your day? Or how many times have you felt like you had to react a certain way because of someone else's behavior?
Oh, it happens all the time, but when you start to embrace this idea of, of emotional responsibility, you realize that you have the power to choose a different response. You don't have to be a prisoner to your emotions or to the emotions of others.
And that's such a valuable skill in all areas of life, from our personal relationships to our professional lives. I mean, companies they're actively seeking out people who demonstrate this kind of self-awareness and emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
They're looking for people who can stay calm under pressure and make good decisions, even when things are tough.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Imagine being in like a really high pressure work environment, dealing with difficult colleagues and, and still being able to like maintain your composure and make rational decisions. That's a superpower. Like that is a superpower.
It is. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to this idea of being on the cause side of the equation. It's about putting yourself in the driver's seat, not just in your personal life, but in your professional life as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why this whole concept of the cause and effect equation it's so powerful. It's not just about personal growth. You know, it's about taking control of your life. It's about taking control of your emotions. It's about taking control of your reactions and ultimately, shaping your destiny.
It's about understanding that you have the power to create the life that you want, both personally and professionally. And that's pretty incredible, if you ask me.
It is. And that's only scratching the surface of what Mothery covers in this episode. There's so much more to unpack here, so let's keep diving in.
One thing that really resonated with me is, this cause and effect equation.
Mm.
It's not about being happy all the time.
Yeah.
It's not about like pretending that everything's perfect. It's about something much, much deeper than that.
Exactly. It's not about like, suppressing your emotions when things get tough. It's not about like pretending that those, negative emotions aren't there.
Right. It's about acknowledging that you have a choice in how you
Yeah.
respond to those emotions, even the difficult ones, even the ones that we don't necessarily want to feel.
Right. And Madhuri makes a great point about, the difference between being on the cause side and being in denial. It's not about pretending that negative things don't happen. It's about, acknowledging them, processing them, and then choosing how you want to move forward.
Yeah. To me, it feels like taking back your power in a way. Like,
Yeah.
I remember a time when, I let a colleague's negativity completely derail my entire day. And I just felt so, frustrated. I felt powerless.
Oh, I've been there too. It's so easy to get, caught up in that kind of emotional spiral. But when you understand this cause and effect equation, you realize that you can choose a different response. You can acknowledge the negativity, but you don't have to, you don't have to let it dictate your own emotional state.
Right, exactly. It's not about, suppressing your emotions. It's about becoming aware of them
Yeah.
and then making conscious choices about how you want to, how you want to react, how you want to respond.
And that takes practice. It's like building a muscle. The more you practice it, the better you get at, at recognizing those moments where you're slipping into, that effect side, and then consciously choosing to shift back to the cause side.
And Maturi offers some really great tips for making that shift, you know. And one of the things she emphasizes is just the importance of awareness. It's about starting to pay attention to your thoughts, to your language.
Yeah, that's so key. Like, how often do you find yourself, blaming blaming others or external circumstances for your feelings or for your results? Like, just becoming aware of those patterns is the first step to changing them.
And once you're aware of those patterns, then you can start to replace them with more empowering thoughts and language. Like for example, instead of saying, they made me feel bad, you could say something like, I'm feeling upset by this situation, and I'm choosing to focus on finding a solution.
It's a subtle shift, but it makes a huge difference. Like, you're moving from a place of blame and powerlessness to a place of ownership and action.
Another tip she gives is to practice gratitude. And I know it sounds simple, but when you really focus on what you're grateful for, it really does shift your perspective.
It helps you to see the good in every situation, even
Yeah.
even the challenging ones, and that can be incredibly empowering. It's like choosing to focus on the light instead of the darkness.
She also talks about the importance of setting clear boundaries, and this is something I've been working on personally, and it's been a game changer. Like it's about learning to say no when necessary, and protecting your time and your energy.
Oh, boundaries are essential for staying on the cause side of the
Mhm.
equation. Like, when you have clear boundaries, you're less likely to be, pulled into other people's dramas, or to feel resentful when you're overextended.
Yeah, and it's not selfish to set boundaries. It's actually a form of self-care. Speaking of self-care, Mathuri also emphasizes the importance of taking care of yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally.
Absolutely. When you're feeling depleted, it's so much harder to make those empowered choices. It's like trying to drive a car on an empty tank. Like, self-care is about, filling your tank so you have the energy and the resilience to navigate, all of life's challenges.
Yeah, it's about, prioritizing your well-being so you can show up as the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes self-care means, asking for help when you need it.
That's such an important point. So many people, they struggle with asking for help because they see it as a sign of weakness. But in reality, it takes strength and courage to admit that you need support.
And remember, being on the cause side
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you have to do everything yourself. It's about recognizing that
Yeah.
you have the power to choose who you surround yourself with,
Hmm.
what support you seek out.
Right, right. Amma 3 also talks about the importance of forgiveness, both forgiving yourself for past mistakes, and forgiving others who may have hurt you.
That's one of the hardest things to do, I think. But it's so powerful, when you hold on to that anger, when you hold on to that resentment, you're essentially giving your power away to that person, to that situation.
You're letting it take the wheel and drive your bus. Forgiveness it's about reclaiming that power. It's about choosing to let go of the past and moving forward with a clean slate.
It's not about condoning the behavior. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of carrying that negativity around with you.
And that's incredibly empowering.
So we've talked about awareness, we've talked about gratitude, boundaries, self-care, forgiveness. Like all of these are tools that can help us to shift from that effect side to the cause side of the equation. But what I'm curious about is how we can actually apply this to our daily lives. Do you have any personal examples of how you've used this cause and effect equation to kind of navigate a challenging situation?
I'm glad you asked that. I had a situation recently where I was feeling really overwhelmed with work. I had taken on like way too much, and I was starting to feel like really resentful and burnt out.
Oh, I think we've all been there at some point.
Yeah.
So how did you use the cause and effect equation to kind of shift your perspective? What did you do?
Well, the first thing I did was just acknowledge that I was, I was on the effect side of the equation. I was blaming those external factors like my workload and my boss for my feelings of stress and overwhelm.
That's a tough realization, but it's an important one. So how did you shift back to the cause side? How did you take back your power?
I reminded myself of Makui's mantra, only I have the power to create my future and I am responsible for the results I get. And I realized that even though I couldn't control, the amount of work that I had, I could control how I responded to it.
So what did you do?
I took a step back and I assessed my priorities and I realized that I had said yes to way too many projects and I needed to set some boundaries. I had a conversation with my boss about my workload and we worked together to create a more manageable plan.
That's great. It sounds like you took ownership of the situation and found a solution that worked for everyone.
Yeah, I did. And you know what? It felt amazing. Like instead of feeling like a victim of my circumstances, I felt empowered. I felt like I was back in control.
And that's the power of the cause and effect equation, right? It's about recognizing that you always have choices, even when things feel really challenging. It's about taking ownership of your life and creating the future that you want.
And that's something worth striving for,
Yeah.
every single day.
Yeah, hearing your story really brings it home. It's like that aha moment when you realize you're not, just along for the ride anymore. You're actually the one who's behind the wheel.
Right. And once you have that realization, it's hard to go back. You start to see like challenges differently, not as roadblocks, but as opportunities, to practice this muscle of responsibility to make a choice and to, steer in a new direction.
It's like Madhuri says, it's not about denying that bad things happen. It's about asking, okay, now what? What's my next move? How do I want to shape this?
Yeah. Which leads us right back to that powerful question that Matori poses at the end of her episode. Who is driving your bus?
I love that question. It's such a vivid image, right?
Uh,
Like, are you letting those external factors, dictate where you go, or are you consciously choosing your route, even if there are, detours along the way?
yeah, because let's be honest, there are always going to be detours. Life is unpredictable, but the difference is whether you're passively letting those detours throw you off course or whether you're actively, navigating them, adjusting your route and staying focused on your destination.
And that's what this whole concept of, personal empowerment is all about.
Hmm.
It's not about, having all the answers or never making mistakes. It's about, owning those mistakes, learning from them, and using them as fuel to keep moving forward.
Right. And that's where the true power lies. Because when you're on the cost side of the equation, you're not afraid of failure. You see it as part of the process. You see it as a valuable learning experience.
It's like that quote, fall 7 times, stand up 8. It's about resilience. It's about, that unwavering belief in your own ability to navigate, the ups and downs of life and come out stronger on the other side.
And that's what, Mathuri's inviting us to do, right? To step into our power, to embrace the responsibility that comes with being the drivers of our own buses and to create a life that is meaningful and fulfilling on our own terms.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Hmm.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is just that responsibility, it's not a burden, it's a gift. It's the key to unlocking our full potential and shaping our desired future.
I love that. Beautifully said. It's about understanding that we have the power to choose to act and to create a life that is truly fulfilling, both for ourselves and for those around us.
And if you're feeling like you've been riding on autopilot, letting life just kind of happen to you, maybe it's time to take the wheel.
Yeah.
Ask yourself that question: who is driving your bus?
Yeah.
And see where the answer takes you. It might just be the start of an amazing journey.